Thanks for joining me today. This is a practice presentation for my final semester subject IKE, Information Knowledge Professional Practice. It's a Folio presentation, so I'm just going to get into it. It's just a little bit about my experience while doing the course, and also some of my reflections, and just a little bit about how I've been able to use some of the things I've learned in this course. So first things first, why did I choose the course? This photo was taken on Black Saturday here in Australia. It was a massive bushfire day. This particular photo is from Doncaster, which just a massive amount of the state was on fire. During this, I think about 170 people died or so, but I heard in one of the reports at the time that someone had died going back to their house to rescue some photos and things like that, and I just thought, wow, in this day and age that's just insane with like digital means that are available to us. So I started to have a look around, and in my research kind of stumbled across this area in terms of records and archive administration. I was kind of wondering what would happen if that was mine, or how well would I be prepared at home if things caught on fire in terms of losing valuable things like that. So enrolled in the degree, came across this course as the first elective that I did, and then a little bit about the placements I did while at this course. The first one was at Museum Victoria, worked with the Kodak Archive. So Kodak used to manufacture a lot of stuff here in Melbourne at a couple of locations. About 10 years ago the factory closed down, and Melbourne Museum were invited, maybe a bit more recent, to just go through and find out what was useful, and there's just boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff that they archived. So my placement was concerning putting some intellectual organisation around the collection, and also then starting to digitise particular items, and this one is one that I did along with another student, Hulla, on the Melbourne Museum. It's on the Melbourne Museum website now, and that's a site plan of their Abbotsford factory in the 1950s. And from there I kind of moved on to another kind of records and archives area, more records as in day-to-day records. This was with the local council, and got involved in a project as well that Darebin were looking at with all the other councils in terms of back scanning, digitising, destroying records, all their maps and stuff like that, and then obviously importing it into their system. So a bit of a scan on demand as well. So that was quite an interesting little project to get involved with as part of my second placement. And then thirdly, I had a look at image and digital copyright. This is a screenshot from Melbourne Museum. Again, a little bit of an April Fool's joke. They were looking at renaming Far Lap to Far Road Lap, in keeping with the Tutankhamun display. That was Gold of the Pharaohs, I think it's called, at the museum. So other things I kind of did along the way in the course was able to contribute to, or I felt like I was in permanent state of reflection. Here's something I did for RMIT University in terms of first year experience interview as while I went back to study, being mature age, things like that. So there's a link there to have a look at. Also did a couple of days in the library at Elwood Primary School. This is also had a bit more of a look around. This is a photo from their Stephanie Alexander kitchen, which is also pretty big at their school. I just thought this was absolutely classic. They had a systems outage and having to re-catalogue and stuff a lot of their books, as well as I guess along the way a high degree of kind of IT, and that's just an example of some of the software that you kind of had to learn and get your head around as part of this degree. So I guess the question, how does this degree differ to others? Well, there's a scan or partial scan of the first degree that I've done here at RMIT, being Bachelor of Business also just in marketing. So in terms of my output, I didn't do any of the core subjects. They were all exempted from previous study. But I thought it interesting, and I guess for this part, just to compare to the marketing. If I was to do the marketing degree today, and this is just a screenshot off the RMIT website, these would be the subjects that I would do. a lot of the business core that you'll see the same, but if you have a look through there, there's marketing communications, strategic marketing, a bit on ethics, global marketing, B2B, service quality, stuff like that, but there's nothing in there that is specifically online. And when I started, like 96, I think the web was just kind of coming in, but I was a bit staggered to still have a look at this program, and that you could actually do it without specific web components, seeing how kind of so much of marketing is social or online and these days. So I don't think compared to that degree, that I think this one is miles more advanced in terms of the kind of areas like knowledge management technologies and what else, a bit of business analysis in terms of how to look at the systems, things like that, which are just miles in advance of where even this is taught today. So I was a bit surprised by that. A few of the strengths that I reckon that this course had, really methodical in referencing, reading widely. I think in my first degree I barely read a book, and certainly hasn't been the case this time. That might be a factor of the course, but also my approach to study. A lot of opportunities to innovate in terms of experimenting with technology, things like that. Another strength is number of librarian jokes. I think there's a healthy disdain for other disciplines. When I did my marketing, it was certainly accounting. That was the butt of jokes, and whereas I think in this is kind of a lack of respect, or it's kind of marketing, I guess, in some ways that cops the flack. Increase in appreciation of the invisible is just relating to a lot of the work that you do in terms of information management. It may not be necessarily visible to the outside eye, but you can certainly tell when things like organisational schemas and stuff have been put into place. Learning blocks is the other one to be able to pursue further. So there's a lot of fairly foundational stuff. I know, for example, databases and things like that. Just so used to experiencing the web through browsers and spent so much time using Excel that like to actually go and learn a database program, I found that a real stretch. So I guess in terms of the overall reflections, my first one is, does information professionals actually exist? And I found that this is a bit of a tension. This cartoon I've used in a previous presentation, but you've got the tension between being free, or with social media, a lot of people just doing it for you now, through tagging and things like that. So the caption here was, suppose information doesn't want to be free. Suppose the information really wants to be meted out in tiny, controlled doses at an outrageously high price. So kind of, I guess, this slide's in there just to still grappling with that in terms of how to position myself as information professional. The other thing that kind of wrestling with is, like, you have mega trends, or like in workplaces, certainly government. So I've spent a couple of placements, state government and local government, is like the whole move towards openness and transparency. So you have that, yet, and certainly I've experienced this through experimentation, that it's not everyone is on the same page when it comes to that. The other thing that I think is in terms of the information environments, like this is the traditional kind of approach, and whereas in actual fact it's a bit more like this, and certainly WikiLeaks is very topical at one stage in terms of going through the course, and it's just, how do you actually get experience with that? What's the emotional capacity involved to be able to kind of operate or effectively manage, or perhaps you'll be the victim of something like a whole heap of content leaking. So just, again, a little bit of experimentation around that. And I think the other thing that really, probably the most critical one, is it, in terms of the approach to information management, it seems to be more so of that the content already exists. There's a whole heap of stuff that actually putting yourself on the other side, that you'll actually be a creator. I think that's kind of an opportunity for improvement in the course. I know there was an elective, but now it seems like it's only at the postgrad level that you can actually do that in terms of electronic publishing and things like that, whereas I think that's equally, it's both sides of the coin there. And the other thing that I guess I found is that this course hasn't particularly had an information science approach, in terms of you have a hypothesis and you're able to test that, and then there's an appreciation that that's what you're actually doing. I think it's been much more opinion, or I guess the influence of those things, I think, have been greater than the information science that you might have actually studied at other degrees. or other locations, other universities that teach this kind of stuff. So very quickly, in terms of learning leaps, the first one is, I'll just finish with a couple of quick stories. The first one is from the Open Day. This year I was able to volunteer for that and working alongside one of the MBA students here, Galina, and she runs like a multicultural employment service, and I was just talking about like the technology and how we do a lot of that in our degree, and we came just across Google Translate. I know previously in study that if you're working with international students, like language can be poor, and obviously then the output is lower because I think they translate it into their like native tongue and then out via English, and it tends to be lower quality, and you have to end up editing that anyway. Well, we kind of did some experimentations in this course in terms of just getting them to do the script in their native language, doing the Google Translate. At least you'd get the content output, and then you'd end up just a bit of proofreading, but you're proofreading or copy editing maybe 500 or 600 words instead of 100, so in terms of actually getting the output out. So that was something that for her work that she found really interesting and was able to jump on board of and go and use actually in terms of getting the output in terms of reports and stuff from some of her staff that are on the same fence. So that was kind of a cool way that you're able to, I guess, share as part of the information knowledge management. The other one is, and coming back to the overall theme, that first or the second slide I showed on the bushfires, that I started thinking, well, what is the state of my own records? And this is just a screenshot from 2010 in terms of, you can see all these boxes here full of records, papers, things like that. So obviously if there's a fire, I wouldn't know what was there, even where to find stuff. So and as you can see, this is September 2011. You can see the boxes have moved now down here, but I guess the learning leap too is that a lot more difficult than first thought in terms of actually having to go through and manage. And then I've done a lot of scanning and things, so but in terms of destruction of documents, they're still just sitting there, and obviously over time stuff gets moved around, so it's harder to keep track of. So I guess there's an ongoing kind of, that's been a little bit of an eye opener for myself. Finally, just in terms of folio development, there's a link there to where my folio is. I finished with a screenshot. One of the cool things able to do is did a fundraising bike ride early on in this course and rode just under a couple of thousand k's around Victoria. And the whole hope of information management still in terms of producing the website and managing data and giving away location in terms of tracking speeds and stuff on GPS and having people to be able to share that whole heap of kind of issues that come up to that I think the area, and certainly in terms of personal information management, is kind of getting more complex rather than less. But again, I encourage you to check out this presentation on the website there, as well as kind of a bit of work in progress of how my folio is going. Thank you for listening, and are there any questions?